Hello everyone and welcome back. So I have another update for my Space Arcade game. As you can see, there is a lot of stuff going on. I have been building basically the behavior tree for these fighter ships, and I've added quite a bit of things, and I'll break them down, but I thought it was just cool to start this out with a little scene of everybody trying to destroy each other. Um, Right, so the last time I talked about creating a behavior tree system, and now I have quite a few little test trees. And so what we were just looking at was on release, and what we're going to do now is go to debug to check out how these trees are actually working. So, so what we have is one large tree is in this, it's called the fighter brain, and this tree is basically the full behavior tree for dogfighting and evading and wandering. And what that looks like is this. Yeah, fighter brain. Here we go. So we have a section that's for evading, and then we have a section that's for attacking, which is like dogfighting and wandering. And so there's really three trees here. There's the evade tree, the dogfight tree, and then the evade or the wander around tree. And testing this was quite hard doing the full tree, so I actually broke it down and made these subtrees as their own with other simplifications. And so if we go look at the test level, I now have these brains that I can comment and uncomment out. So the wander brain was what I had last time with the red lines, and they just basically wander around. I changed the debug lines to green, a lighter green, to make it easier to kind of see what's going on instead of the bright red. I'm not going to show that one again. You can look at the other video if you want to see that. But what I will show you is we'll start off with the evade part. So what I noticed in debugging was that the dogfighting ships seem to accumulate into small areas around their ships, and that wasn't great for performance reasons. And so I decided, well, I need a mechanism to kind of space the ships out. And one way to do that is to cause the ships to try and evade and get to a preferable place to dogfight. So as we can see here, this ship is just running into the evade brain. It's just always trying to evade. And it's doing a little, excuse me, a little spiral pattern around this yellow line. And so the yellow line represents where it's at and the preferred location to dogfight at. And when it gets there, it just resets and goes to a new one. So this is one pattern where the ship spirals in kind of a rolling manner. But there is another one. So here's the other pattern where the ship will try to do cycles and spirals around that line to its dogfight location. And so this actually makes it is actually pretty slow when he's doing this spiral thing. And so I kind of gamified it, and when they do that spiral around the line, I actually increase their speed so that they are moving at about the same speed as they would as if just flying straight down the line. Because I can't easily show you, but it actually drastically reduces the speed and they'd be easily picked off. So I guess it's not a very good dogfight tactic. But nevertheless, for making interesting AI, I thought it was worth it. To add the gamification, that is. So that is the evade tree. Now let's take a look at the dogfight tree, which is what we were looking at the beginning of the video. So I started out and I created this dogfight test brain, and I renamed it to very verbose. So this is a like full-fledged behavior tree, and if we go look at it, you can see that it's pretty large. This is a pretty large tree just for dogfighting, and it has all these states for like creating combos to try to do interesting dogfighting tactics, which actually it turned out that the simpler rules made for more interesting dogfights. But nevertheless, this is a full-fledged tree, and I wrote it, got it working with a few ships, and ran it with a reasonably not a terribly large number of ships, but more than 2 ships, and found that it was killing my performance. I mean, I was getting like 14 frames on debug mode, which only had like 20 ships, so that was unacceptable. And I profiled it and found various bottlenecks that I did not want to address, because I'm wanting to make the actual game playable. Perhaps I'll address those later, but instead what I did is I created a different brain that compacted most of that tree you just saw into fewer nodes. And so that is the Dogfight test brain. If we look at that one, the tree is much, much smaller. It has a lot of memory, but much smaller. It's just, if we're in the Dogfight state, then run this Dogfight node, which is basically a ticking node. And that, removing all of that rapid state change within the behavior tree it caused me to have 60 frames per second, where the other was giving me like 14 frames per second. So now what that looks like is this Dogfight test brain. So now you can see that there's quite a few ships. I think there's 20 in this debug environment. But you can see that they are doing some, I mean, it's not terribly complex, but they are flying back and forth trying to shoot at each other. And the guy I was following just got destroyed. So you're probably noticing the purple and yellow lines and whatnot. Those are instanced debug lines, so they're pretty efficient to render, but they can be all removed via compile time flags. So the final game or whatever wouldn't ship with those lines drawing. But they are extremely useful for visual debugging. As you could probably imagine, debugging those behavior trees for numerous ships and figuring out what's going on by stepping through code is just, it's not very efficient when I can instead just watch this guy and see what he's doing. So you see that yellow line, that right there is representing him boosting away from the person he's trying to dogfight with. And there's a random chance that will boost away, or there's a chance he will just start turning and try to engage the ship like he's doing right now. The purple line basically means he's engaging. So you can see both of them are boosting away right now, which creates a lot of distance between them, which was solving an issue of the dogfights happening. They were basically extremely close to every time they turn around, they would only get about like one shot off before the dogfight before they would pass each other and have to circle back. There was so many issues with this though. One issue is that was when they would eliminate their targets, they needed to find new targets, and basically there was all kinds of just broken issues of a person would be destroyed but not release his target, and so nobody would ever target that person. But as you can see now, when someone gets destroyed, there is a system in place for them to find another target. Though I still believe there's some bugs with that one. And there was all sorts of memory leaks in terms of pointers not being cleaned up when ships are destroyed, so that was not great. So that's about it. Now I want to try to make it so I can possess a ship and actually fly it around and control it and make it engage in the dogfights. So we'll see how that works out. Oh yeah, before we end this, let's actually take a look at this in release mode. So this is 5,000 ships, and you'll notice near the beginning I'll have very poor frame rate, and it'll pretty quickly become back normal. The issue is that the projectiles flying through the air are eating the performance. There's too many of them from the ships. If I turn the projectiles off, I have pretty smooth frames. But as you can see right now, we're pretty low in the frame rates because we have 5,000 ships, but if you watch the number of explosions that are happening, you can tell that a lot are being destroyed. If you look in the top left corner, you can see the frame rate is just climbing and climbing as the ships get destroyed. But it is entirely related to, or caused right now by the projectiles that are flying through the air. I could probably tweak them so that they fire a little less frequently. I already have some measures in place for that. It calls them to do bursts that are on a timeout, and then kind of a steady fire rate between the bursts. But right now the bursts I think are as large as like 4 or 5 shots, so essentially dropping that down might increase the frame rate. But now we're at a pretty smooth 60 frames per second. And so I think I'm going to try to get most of the stuff working now and just optimize at the end, because I've been optimizing as I go along and it's been a good learning experience, but at the same time it takes a lot of time to optimize, and some of the stuff I'm not even keeping and I'm just throwing out, and the time optimizing that code I don't keep is I don't want to say it's wasted, but because I learn from it, but it's not helping me meet my goals right now.